Mr. Mediator, I want to thank you for the opportunity for this session today. It really is important for me to express who I am, and so that you can understand how perhaps we can come to some understanding of common interest. Who am I? I am business, and I'd like to introduce myself to you. What am I? What am I about? I'm about certainty, and I'm about risk. Mr. Mediator, I want to also thank you for the opportunity in this session today to be able to express that although your partner arbitration is not present, I think it will be accretive and it will be helpful to find new ways, innovative ways, pioneering ways in which I, business, and you, mediation, can work together. I want to help you help me. What is important to me? I want to express to you, Mr. Mediator, my interest. And I want to understand your interest. And I want to find a common way in which we can create value and collaboration. I am about value. I'm also about mitigation. Why is this important to me? It's important to me because it creates economic opportunity as I am business. It's important to you because it creates economic opportunity for business. You can play a role in that. You can help me. But to do that, you must first understand my DNA. You must understand how I think, how I look at the world, from the prism of what my interests are. Please, and I say this, Mr. Mediator, with all respect and all sensitivity in a session that allows us to come together, don't impose what I know you don't want to do. The traditional norms and values of where your partner arbitration comes from. Those are good. Those are important. Those are tools. They are tools I need as well, but not always. I want you to think about, for a moment, through my lens, I don't want conflict. I don't want disputes. I don't live in a magical world, as I know you don't, that they will happen. But I want to find a way that you also think about what I do want, which is value creation, certainty, and finding and understanding by my experiences in this session today, that risk is not just my enemy. I also value risk as a friend. I look for risk as a friend, not in disputes and not in conflicts. And I understand when we're talking risk and conflict, you're probably more familiar with my partner risk, because at that point, it is my enemy. And you play a role already in all of the elements that you are very familiar with. And I appreciate that. And I want to thank you for that. You understand that when I'm in the role of risk as my enemy, I need to mitigate that risk. And you have shared with me many times how I can do that through the prism of mediation. You've shared with me from the perspective of time and cost savings, and also inside the context of when risk is my enemy. You've shown how I could possibly create additional new value proposition, preserve my relationships with the counterparty upon which I have risk with, or a conflict with. We call it, in my world, Mr. Mediator, hedging my position. But my hedging also has another trajectory, and that is even when risk is my friend. And I share this with you so that perhaps you can start to understand how I see things through the prism of me, business. Business is complex. It's as complex as the things you know as an expert in the field of mediation and addressing things that are not necessarily business related. And they're very important, but they're also very different. And tools in the ethos of conflict are absolutely appropriate. And I'm going to try to use those tools as I become more familiar and more comfortable with how I can use those tools as a hedge when risk is my friend. Because then, even when risk is my friend, at some point, it could become my enemy. So you understand what I mean by this. All contracts have a life cycle. I begin a relationship with enthusiasm, optimism. I begin a trade on a stock that I want to buy with the expectations that I'm going to get a return on my investment. Somewhere along the way, things change. My job as business is to figure out in that life cycle when risk is no longer my friend and I cannot expose myself to the value proposition of adding exposure for more return. And I start to need to pivot to more of a mitigation role in order to protect what it is that I have on the table, or what my assets that I've created, or that investment that I've made. Business is complex. I'm here to show you it has many faces. It's not one size fits all either. So I ask and implore you to look at me as a representative of a very diverse community. For example, if I'm capital, I have certain goals and desires to meet, certain expectations. I look more for yield. I look for how I can enhance my yield position. If I am an entrepreneur, I am looking to build something, create new value in a system, be an innovator, possibly create a good, create a service. Sometimes business is morphed in a family complexity, as much of what this conference has focused on. Business is small, business is large, business is global, business is regional. Business sustains communities. Business is the foundation of nations. And business elevates, through economic prosperity, the ability for human beings to live and improve their lives. Mr. Mediator, I hope that you can reflect on this as I explain how we can work together in a moment. What are some of the important points, the salient points, I'd like you to at least think about that I want to focus on? I'm about information. Whatever information I base my decisions on as the business is extremely crucial to me. But the reality is that information is always changing. Some of my hats that I wear as a business, in all the sectors that business represents, have to adapt. In that adoption, I have to think about the information that I'm being provided. That is the essence of success. It's the essence of failure. We call this asymmetry. And we're always trying to achieve what we call more perfect symmetry. This is economics. Embedded in that is also another core objective of mine. How can I maximize efficiency? How can I continue to improve what I do? Business. We call this risk assessment. We call this risk management. Believe it or not, the words you use, Mr. Mediator, are no different than mine. We just approach them differently. So we have things in common. We just have to find ways in which we can work together, where I help you and you help me. And in that process, I will become more comfortable. I will become more adaptable to why I want to use mediation, not just because it's denoted to conflict. I don't go into business with a partner because I don't trust the partner the minute I go into business with that partner. Otherwise, why was I in business with the partner to begin with? I don't invest in a company who's in bankruptcy. Why would I put my capital into something that I'm going to lose when I know they're in bankruptcy? I don't start with a business plan that I don't include existential factors that may perhaps not lead to the failure of what I created, but because of the failures of what I didn't consider. So I evaluate everything from a different perspective of perhaps what you're not used to, but yet the tools you have in conflict can also be used in helping me add value to my mergers and acquisitions, add value in change and control, add value when capital is deployed in different time periods as I hit benchmarks in a product that I've developed, add value between creditors who have shared in the exposure and the liability into an investment, add value when existential factors that none of us consider, like a credit crisis, take place. Mr. Mediator, I'm not here as an opposition. I'm here because I'm confused. I'm here because I think it's about law. I'm about business. I want you to consider that the school bus can have the lawyers on it. The school bus can have the other tools available to me, such as your partner arbitration. But what I really want you to consider is that you are driving the school bus with me, business, not you with the lawyer. And it's no disrespect to the lawyers because I need the lawyers. I want the lawyers. They're just as important as you, Mr. Mediator. And there seems to be a conflict between you and the lawyers as to what the value is to me, the business. So let's not begin at the end of the life cycle of an agreement. Let's begin at the beginning of the life cycle of an agreement. How can we do this? Well, one of the ways we can do it is through what I call economic efficiency mediation. What is this all about? Economic efficiency mediation is reversing the model. It's taking the baby of mediation, who has grown up under his parents or her parents' arbitration. But the baby's not a baby anymore. The baby's a young adult. The baby has a mind of an adult, and that adult now has a mind of its own. Mediation is its own discipline. It should not be part of the dispute resolution process anymore. It can be part as a partner, but not as an add-on feature. I, as business, can understand then that as a singular entity. It's a discipline that can be applied into business schools, accounting, finance, global business, marketing, economics, data analytics, AI technology. But for me to get there, I need to know that you're there as my partner, Mr. Mediator, in the beginning of my process. I need you to show me how it works from a value level when I'm learning my education in a business school that will then enable me the right tools to implement mediation and mediation models, such as self-determination, such as collaboration, such as preventive care. I'm not interested in hearing your story later on when you want to treat the symptom or the disease. When I get to the hospital, I still will need you, but I'd really prefer not to get to the hospital. I want to meet often and confer with those I have agreements with, whether they're governments, whether they're quasi-governments. I'm business. I'm capital. I'm entrepreneurship. I'm innovation. What's important to you? I also want to understand that. I want to understand your interest so that we can find a way in which we maximize process efficiency of the process itself. Improve. I want to help you, help me improve this process. How can we do that? We need to think about what the third-party neutral is. What's its role beyond the prism of conflict? Can it have another role? When I am sitting in a meeting as business with my sales team and they're selling a drug into the market to doctors, and those drugs are created by a brilliant owner of my company, but the sales of the first round of the launch of that drug is important to that owner because it then allows capital to put additional money in based on performance, based on market, based on quality, based on usage. And if I don't get the capital, then everything I worked hard for may not exist. But what I don't know is going on in my business, because I'm at the top trying to continue to innovate my drug. I'm at the top trying to keep my capital patient, and capital is only patient so long. I then rely on structure as it builds. I hire managers, I hire vice presidents, and they're human beings. You can relate to that. They all have their own personalities. They all have things they bring with them every day when they drive into work. Sometimes that affects how they even interact with my other employees. It creates stress. Stress creates a loss of productivity. How can you help me reduce some of this and increase my process efficiency? Because if you can help me increase my process efficiency, you just created value, not in conflict, but in profit for me at the bottom line. And the more profit at the bottom line, the more I can contribute towards GDP growth, the more I can give my employees bonuses at Christmas, the more I can raise their salaries. And the more I can do that, the more I can hire. And the more I can do that, the more that they will spend within a nation state. And the more you do that, you grow your GDP. You grow your economy. You grow your quality of life. So I pose the question, but I don't ask you to answer it today. I just ask you to think about this. But when you approach me that mediation is this wonderful tool, and I believe it is, but only from the prism that you're part of your partner arbitration, because you're part of this thing called alternative dispute resolution, which is, from what I understand, a process private, possibly regulated by some law. I think it's a byproduct of litigation. Who am I dealing with? I'm relying on my good counsel, which again, I need, I want. But frankly, to be honest with you, I'd rather be dealing with my business lawyer. I'd rather be creating value. I'd rather be paying my legal fees for my business lawyer to charge me happily because I'm making money. I'm creating value. When I have to go see my litigation lawyer down the hall in that law firm, I respect that litigation lawyer. I need that litigation lawyer, even if it's for an arbitration, even if it's to sit by my side in a mediation, although I think I'd prefer the business lawyer, frankly. However, there is no value creation, not at that moment anyway. I have to hedge, I have to switch, I have to think about containment, I have to think about reputational risk, I have to think about the 20-year relationship I had with that partner. All things, Mr. Mediator, I know you know well. But you sell it to me only from that perspective. Please, I implore you, sell it to me from the beginning. Be my partner in the beginning of when I make my deal. How can you make and improve my process efficiency? As I said, one of the things that's important to me is information. If I can't get the right information, I'm probably going to make the wrong decisions. I may come out of resolving those wrong decisions, Mr. Mediator, but most likely it's going to cost me resources. It's going to cost me time. It may even cost me my business. And certainly it may even have an impact on the value of my business. Let me share a small story. There was an innovation from someone I know in the business space, a stakeholder, a constituent to business. It's called Juul. Here you may have another name, but we call it electronic or e-cigarettes. Juul innovated. Juul created something new. Juul created something the market wanted, because there are people that want to smoke, regardless of policy, regardless of community pressure, regardless of culture, social, and norms. Juul saw a gap in the system through technology that would create something of value. What Juul didn't recognize, while it was putting all its resources into that proposition, which made Juul a success, irrespective of some of the ethical arguments that that particular stakeholder in business perhaps has, it still created value, created tens of thousands of jobs. It created hundreds of millions of dollars of value in market share. It's to the point where Juul was ready to do a deal with Philip Morris. What Juul didn't think about, didn't know, or possibly was misinformed, is that when the ethical issues came up, they didn't have the infrastructure in place that their business partner, Philip Morris, has had for over 65 years. What do I mean by infrastructure? Good lawyers, governmental affair establishment, politicians, people that Philip Morris has needed for decades in order for its business to continue to sustain itself, even as the culture of our society perhaps has changed. So when Philip Morris, who was going to pay a certain value for Joule, picked up on the existential factor of asymmetric information that Joule did not know was coming down the railroad, Philip Morris went to work. Philip Morris makes sure that every day in a place called the United States, in every state, there's something terrible going on about the e-cigarette. Now, eventually, Philip Morris will buy Joule, but they're not going to buy it for what they would have 6 months ago. How could you, Mr. Mediator, have helped Joule realize that while it was bringing in the cash in the good times to create the value, which led to the opportunity for Philip Morris to be its exit strategy, that it should have learned that within its entire infrastructure, there was no investment made by all those brilliant vice presidents running around on their corporate jets, eating those fancy lunches, and having staffs to help them, that perhaps, given what they were doing, they should have created some structure. And now it's going to cost them. Here, this is very familiar to you. It's conflict area. We have the mediator, we have the opposing parties, and we find as mediators, at least you find, because I'm business, some zone of agreement. And all that value that you talk about, that's in this phase. I want to make a deal. I need to create information gathering to do that. I need to understand how my organizational structure is operating. Is there slippage in the system? Because I'm in the E-suite, the C-suite. Remember the drug example I gave you? That was a real example. It was an example of my brother's sister-in-law. She worked for a company. And I'm saying this as Mr. Business. And in that example, the drug rep was getting data back, feedback from the doctors buying the drugs. But it wasn't winding up in her sales manager's reports because there must have been a directive not to show the real information to senior management because it would have affected their bonuses, their performance. Can you imagine if you could help me in a process in which during certain intervals, they're all required to come together with your help to exchange the right information? And as a result of no process being there that allowed those employees a comfortable, safe place to exchange information in a confidential way with the help of a well-trained third-party neutral, the right information that was asymmetric would have become more symmetric, not perfect symmetry, and perhaps the people in the E-suite and C-suite would have made informed decisions that wouldn't have put their company out of business. EEM is you. EEM is helping me collect that data. And I'm doing it in a place just like mediation does, so that you get the right information, which allows me to make the better choices and decisions. In economics, we call this Pareto efficiency. And I'm not going to bore those in the room that went to law school, perhaps, and math and economics is not their thing. On this side of the world, I find that there's more common interest in these fields. But the whole concept here is long shadowing of contracting. What is this? The idea from classic economics is the more that I communicate, which you are the expert of helping communication, or creating from the lack of communication, more communication. And what comes out of more communication? Information. And the information helps both parties not only continue the relationship, but as business, stall and protect us from those conflicts. And again, it's not perfect information because it's never supposed to be perfect. We're just supposed to improve the process. So if you think about the life cycle of a contract, you think about a relationship, you think about an agreement, you think about after the agreement, parties perform pursuant to the agreement. And then the information starts going in divergent circles, and that's asymmetry. So we need to bring that back. We need to rebalance it. Efficiency plus behavior plus the information creates the equilibrium again. I want to thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit of insight into why and what economic efficiency mediation is, Mr. Mediator. And I hope from this session that you, mediation, have a better, more understanding of my interests and what we could do together as me business to collaborate, to create value together in the discipline of mediation. Thank you very much.